A tense French Grand Prix was ultimately decided by a penultimate lap pass, but the defining moment of the race had really happened many laps earlier. The route leading to Max Verstappen's dive inside Lewis Hamilton to win at Paul Ricard can be traced all the way back to the first pit stops, and a moment that surprised Verstappen and completely caught out Mercedes. A stunning Verstappen undercut turned a 3-second deficit to Hamilton into the race lead, flipped the battle on its head and set up everything that followed. Mercedes was baffled by it at the time and after the race as well, leaving Hamilton to rue another defeat, while Verstappen and his Red Bull team extended their leads in both championships. Let us know in the comments what you made of the race, answer our poll to rate it out of 5 stars, and if you like this video you can make it a hat trick of showing us some love by hitting the thumbs up button as well. Verstappen's initial spell in the lead lasted all of 1.5 corners after he got caught out at turn 1, had to take to the runoff and allowed Hamilton to fly past. Given the French Grand Prix has precedent for what we'll politely call being a processional affair, hand in Hamilton track position looked like it could be a fatal error for Verstappen. Especially as Hamilton looked comfortable in the first stint and built a 3.2 second lead. But the twisted irony for Mercedes is that Hamilton's strong position out front and Valtteri Bottas trying to pressure Verstappen for second ultimately triggered his downfall. Bottas had been struggling with a vibration, so Mercedes felt that, plus the chance to challenge Verstappen, made it worth committing to his first pit stop on lap 17, even though Bottas felt it was too soon and would later rage at the decision. With a 3.2 second lead, Mercedes didn't even feel the need to stop Hamilton the lap after Bottas, which was the lap that Verstappen came in. Instead, Hamilton stopped the lap after Bottas, and this was the decision that cost him the race. But the question was how? Mercedes models were telling the team that the gap was enough, and Hamilton was even told he'd emerge clear of Verstappen at the pit lane exit. Verstappen himself couldn't explain how he'd swept into the lead, admitting it was very unexpected. Perhaps we can shed some light. Verstappen gained 9 tenths on Hamilton on his in-lap compared to Hamilton's full circuit lap time. Then his out-lap was ultra fast as well, as the Red Bull switched the hard tyres on beautifully, while Hamilton's in-lap wasn't as good as Verstappen's had been. There was a hint of confusion from Hamilton around whether he was actually stopping on that lap, so perhaps he'd left some time on the table in the first half of it. And Verstappen had a 0.4 second faster run through the pit lane as well. Tally up roughly 0.9 seconds on the in-lap, 1.8 seconds on the out-lap and 4 tenths in the pit lane, and you get pretty much the exact amount Verstappen was able to overcome so quickly. So the answer was simply a far more powerful undercut than anyone expected, especially Mercedes. Hence the apologetic "don't know what just happened there mate" message from Peter Bonington to Hamilton at the time, and strategy chief James Vowles' unusual post-race radio appearance where he admitted "this one's on us." Even though Hamilton lost out in that crucial moment, he still very nearly won the race. But he was passed on the penultimate lap after a brave call from Red Bull to switch Verstappen to a 2-stop strategy and lose track position again, this time on purpose. That was because Hamilton had pressured Verstappen relentlessly after losing the lead at the first stops, and Verstappen told his team he couldn't keep that pace up to the finish. Verstappen's message was relayed to Hamilton, who agreed and told Mercedes to make sure he got the undercut this time. Hamilton was basically calling for a repeat of the Spanish Grand Prix, where he couldn't pass Verstappen on track initially, so switched to a 2-stop, caught him back up on fresh tyres, and took the lead as Verstappen ran out of rubber. But that didn't happen this time, partly because Mercedes didn't feel the option was open to it, and partly because Red Bull was feeling confident Verstappen would have the pace to claw back the pit stop loss if he pitted, so acted first. That wasn't the case at Barcelona, but it was in France because the Red Bull was no longer disadvantaged by its tyre usage. The tyre challenge wasn't at the rear, it was front graining, and it applied to everyone pretty much equally. The other obstacle Mercedes had that Red Bull didn't was Sergio Perez. He was close enough to the lead group to overtake any car that pitted a second time and had extended his first stint, so was on fresher tyres as well. Red Bull had the freedom of knowing Verstappen would have a clear run at the 2 Mercedes after a second pit stop because it could just move Perez aside when Verstappen caught him. But Mercedes didn't have that luxury. Perez would have been a difficult car for Hamilton to pass if he stopped for a second time because the Red Bull was quicker in a straight line and had tyres in good shape. That was the reason Mercedes didn't feel able to commit to a second Hamilton stop and risk Verstappen staying out. And it's worth remembering that Verstappen stopped from the race lead, so had another 3 seconds over Hamilton and still only just managed to make this gamble work. So there's no reason to assume that a braver Mercedes call in the second half of the race would definitely have led to a Hamilton victory. Which takes us back to the first pit stops as the crucial moment. Because had Hamilton not lost track position, it's highly likely Red Bull would have committed Verstappen to the 2-stop strategy anyway and probably had slightly too much ground to make up to win. The French Grand Prix defeat follows an extremely critical judgment by Mercedes of its performance at the Monaco and Azerbaijan races that it is falling short of its title-winning standard. Mercedes felt pain, overwhelming frustration and anger in the wake of a Baku weekend in which it had simply lacked performance. And as that had come after a botched pit stop cost Bottas a podium in Monaco where Hamilton was nowhere all weekend, Mercedes admitted it wasn't at the level it needed to be to win the championship. The Monaco and Azerbaijan weekends were not expected to play to Mercedes' strengths, so it was no surprise it struggled compared to Red Bull at those races. But the French Grand Prix has proven that Mercedes wasn't able to simply dismiss those struggles as a result of tracks that just didn't suit its car. Instead, Mercedes has suffered shortcomings in several key areas and admitted that lots of things aren't running as smoothly as they have in previous years. Technically, it has struggled to find an answer to its tyre warm-up issues, which is why Hamilton suffered in Monaco and Bottas did in Azerbaijan. Operationally, Mercedes cost Bottas a first Monaco podium with a front right wheel change that started on Sunday afternoon and was only finished on Tuesday morning back at the factory. Mercedes also found itself dramatically on the back foot in Baku, searching for performance all weekend, while Hamilton compounded its struggles by accidentally selecting a brake preset at the final restart that caused him to lock up and turn what should have been a fortunate victory into a pointless 15th place finish. So Mercedes was ultimately lucky before France that Verstappen's unfortunate tyre blowout hadn't inflicted even more damage in both championships. But returning to conventional circuits hasn't solved all Mercedes' ills. Yes, it was much more competitive in France, but it still ended up outgunned in qualifying and turned track position into a defeat in the race. Mercedes has recovered from setbacks in the past, but this time it has a few deficits, hence the extent of its self-criticism. After Baku, Mercedes felt it needed to buck its ideas up to make sure it could compete for this championship. But after France, it was still left to Roux failing to win the race, regain the lead of one championship, and get both cars on the podium when it could have done. The team admitted it cannot afford to let these opportunities go in such a tight battle, and this race showed exactly why. Because even though Mercedes was much closer to its usual high standards again, it was still not enough to beat Red Bull. But what do you make of Mercedes' performance in France? Did it lose Hamilton the race, or did Red Bull and Verstappen earn it the hard way? Let us know in the comments, give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and if you're not already subscribed to our channel, hit the big red button to change that, and join us again next time.